Nice to see you again. If you're returning to this channel, and welcome. If this is the first time when you're accessing my channel or any of my videos, my name is Violeta. For those who don't know me, I hope you're well and are hopefully enjoying the new emerging season. The sun has been very generous for us here in Edinburgh. So I hope the sun is shining for you wherever you are as well. I'm enjoying a cup of tea, still dealing with some residual cough from a condition that I had a few weeks ago, but getting there. I'm sure you can relate to what it means to have a flu and a cough and feeling poorly, but I'm feeling better these days, so that's fantastic. Sorry. For today's video, I had two aspects in mind that I wanted to discuss, explore, share with you. And those are, first of all, I want to talk to you about what counseling is. And second, I want to share with you a bit about my experience of counseling, of what it means to be counseled and what it means to be in a process of counseling. So yeah. For the first point, I want to make a very clear difference between counseling as a form of therapy, psychiatry, and psychology. I know there are a lot of people still, although information is everywhere, and to be fair, a lot of information is misleading or confusing. Many people I met are quite confused as to understanding what counseling actually is and what would be the difference between a counselor, a psychologist, and a psychiatrist. So for that purposes, I'm going to make a clear difference between these three fields, because there is a very clear difference in terms of what they are and what they involve. You'll probably hear me cough a little bit in this video, so I apologize beforehand. For that, I have my cup of tea to help me going. I recommend always a hot or warm drink for a tickly throat, or if you're coughing. So yeah, without further ado, let's jump on discussing the first point. First and foremost, what is counseling? A very basic definition of counseling is, in simple words, is a form of talking therapy. It's a process where an individual or couple or a family meet with a trained professional counselor or therapist to talk about any issues, problems that they are facing in their lives. Professional counseling is confidential and non-judgmental. Many people then get confused between counseling and therapy. Counseling is a form of therapy. However, counseling is not only destined to people who face difficulties or challenges, mental health issues, physical health issues, or anything like grief or illness, severe illness, physical illness. Counseling is also a form of therapy that can help individuals or couples or families or groups or vulnerable groups of the society, like minorities or discriminated people, to flourish, to gain the confidence that they need to stand up for themselves, or to flourish in their life in terms of taking the next challenging steps to develop in their life as an individual, or to develop professionally. So yeah, it's not necessarily for helping people heal or helping people process pain. It's also for helping people process their strengths, understanding their strengths, understanding maybe certain boundaries that needs to be pushed with themselves and with others, or certain things that just need to be spoken out, and gaining that confidence to be able to tackle those things in their lives. So in very short words, that's what counseling is, and I'm going to leave it here for now, leave it there for now. What psychology is the scientific study of the human mind and its functions, especially those aspects affecting behavior in any given context. Psychology includes the study of the conscious mind as well as the unconscious mind, as well as includes the study of feelings and emotions. There are different fields of psychology, anything ranging from counseling psychology to clinical psychology, sports psychology, educational psychology, developmental psychology. More often than not, a lot of psychologists will be qualifying as a therapist or a psychotherapist, and we'll discuss about psychotherapy just a bit later on in this video. So again, psychology is a scientific study of the human mind and behavior. To present in short word what psychology is. Then psychiatry, again, very different than psychology. Psychiatry is the medical specialty, the branch of medicine which is devoted to diagnosing, preventing, and treatment of mental conditions. And you'll hear a lot people when they refer to someone who is struggling in their mind, they'll either call them the challenges that people have, they'll call them mental health issues or mental health challenges or psychiatric conditions. And the term for psychiatric conditions would be used for those mental health conditions that are quite severe, such as schizophrenia or psychosis, which is schizophrenia, which is a type of psychosis, and major depressive disorders, or mood or personality disorders such as bipolar, or a form of depression, a mild depression, dysthymia. So psychiatry is the field of medicine that is concerned with studying, diagnosing, preventing, and treating these conditions, most of the time using pharmacological treatment, medication. And I think I'll leave it here in terms of developing what psychiatry is. If you're interested, do go online and search more about psychiatry. I find it's a field very, very interesting. And of course, as a counselor, as a therapist, as a psychotherapist, you will be learning a lot about mental health conditions and psychiatric conditions and pharmacological treatment. So yeah, it's really important for you as a therapist to develop your knowledge base and skill base in that regard. Though not all the counselors or therapists will necessarily have knowledge of psychiatric conditions. Why? Because counseling is a form of talking therapy, is a form of psychological treatment similar to psychotherapy, which would deal to start with, or would be concerned and looking at helping those people who don't necessarily have severe conditions. And by severe conditions, I'm thinking about psychosis or schizophrenia or major depressive disorder. I'm thinking counselors will not be able to prescribe medication, antidepressants or SSRIs or anything like that. Psychiatrists have a medical degree and are allowed, and that's their job, to prescribe medication for those people who choose to take medication for their challenges, physical and mental. Again, psychologists, unless they are a clinical psychologist, they will not prescribe medication either. Psychologists, counselors, psychotherapists, and therapists aim to help people cope with their mental health challenges, emotional challenges, making use of psychological treatment or of therapeutic methods, psychotherapeutic modalities. Psychological treatment will aim to help people via these channels, where psychiatrists, I would say their bread and butter is to prescribe medication to those people for whom the conditions are quite severe and can't be managed without treatment, without pardon me, without medication. Though very often psychiatrists will offer a combined treatment. They'll offer pharmacological treatment as well as psychological treatment. So very often you will see psychiatrists, which are also qualified psychotherapists. So they will offer treatment, medication plus psychological treatment, therapy, a form of therapy, be that a talking therapy or anything like psychosomatic therapy or using any other psychotherapeutic approaches in terms of the methods and the tools and the resources they're using to help their clients. So clients or patients. So yeah, a counselor or a therapist or a psychotherapist is not a medical doctor. A clinical psychologist is not a medical doctor. A psychiatrist is a medical doctor. And as I said, unless you're a clinical psychologist and you work in a hospital basis, you would not prescribe medication. Actually, a clinical psychologist herself, be that a man or a woman, wouldn't prescribe medication on their own. They might contribute to MDT, multidisciplinary team, bringing their approach and their perspective, which might support the psychiatrists to prescribe certain medication, proven that the patient is keen on taking those. A counselor would not necessarily, it is possible that a counselor would have a medical degree, but to be a counselor, you don't need to have a medical degree. Also, to be a counselor, you don't need to have a psychology degree. For example, my background is in social work and probation in social work, probation counseling and social work. But I also completed a diploma in psychology of mental health, clinical psychology, because I was interested in learning more about the human mind and the human behavior and how we can help people to process and cope and find a way forward through difficult emotions or difficult life experiences. Anything ranging from difficult experience or trauma or abuse or addiction, you name it. Many times counseling is, again, pardon me, many times counseling is, again, maybe mistaken by advocacy or mentoring or life coaching or an advice giving service or mediation. The reality is that all these other forms of help, such as mediation, mentoring, coaching, do share common elements with counseling because they involve very advanced communication skills as well as a desire to help an individual to find solution to their difficulties and advance in their life or in their situation, and help people to focus on finding solutions. The difference between counseling and all these others forms of help is that counseling is a form of professional help that requires a contract and an agreement that the process that in which two individuals, for example, a counselor and a person, agree to enter, which is named counseling. To actually read to you a definition that COSCA offers of counseling, that would be formal counseling refers to an interaction between the counselor and the client where both parties agree that the main purpose for their interaction is counseling and that it takes place in a setting of privacy appropriate to the boundaries and confidentiality required. So yeah, boundaries and confidentiality and contract and the agreement of actually entering a process of counseling are the main differences that would set apart mentoring, coaching, advocacy from counseling. I'm thinking mentoring or coaching wouldn't necessarily require a contract, wouldn't necessarily require a formal setting, which should respect the boundaries and meet the conditions that counseling requires in terms of privacy and confidentiality. So, yeah, I hope you get my point. But yeah, as I said, these different forms of support do share common skills with counseling. And I'm looking at the material I got from my tutor, anything from verbal to non-verbal skills, anything from the ability to ask open-ended questions to help the person, the client, to explore more a certain topic, or to offer more details in order to understand themselves in what they're sharing. Anything from encouraging the speakers to focus on key issues. These are counseling. These are skills that both a counselor and a mentor can share, or both a mediator and an advocacy worker can share. This being said, yeah, and I'm thinking, is there anything else I want to share with you on that? Most of the time, people wouldn't necessarily sign a contract, wouldn't sign a contract that explicitly states with terms and conditions that they enter a mentoring relationship or an advocacy relationship. I think these services are a little more ad hoc, whereas counseling requires quite a clear agreement between the counselor and the counselee, to call it like that, the person who is being counseled. So yeah, I think this is everything I wanted to share with you on the first point in terms of what counseling is. Yeah, and the difference between counseling and psychology and psychiatry. Maybe another aspect I'm thinking I'd like to share with you is that many people would think that there is a difference between counseling and psychotherapy. And that would be probably one of the differences. Even to these days, I mean, since counseling emerged as a field, there has been a lot of dispute and even conflict, or well, constant disagreement, to say the least, between the difference between counseling and psychotherapy, and which one is the chicken, which one is the egg, and the other way around. From my experience, maybe the main difference between counseling and psychotherapy is the training route, and the fact that maybe psychotherapy training requires more in-depth training sometimes, but not necessarily. You can be a qualified psychotherapist at diploma level as well as you can be a qualified counselor at diploma level or at master level. In counseling or in psychotherapy, you can qualify as high as doctorate or postdoctorate. It depends very much on the individual and whatever how they want to develop and what route they want to take. Do they want to take a more experiential route? Do they want to take a more academic route? So yeah, in terms of training, that might be one difference. In terms of what counseling can help with and what psychotherapy can help with, many people think that psychotherapy might be able to provide psychological support and psychological treatment for more severe conditions. So you think that a trained psychotherapist would be more prepared or have more in-depth understanding of psychiatric conditions or severe mental health issues, and a counselor might maybe deal with or help people that deal with less severe conditions. But again, that's very much up to each individual. I know personally senior counselors with a really wide range of experience in helping people with severe conditions such as schizophrenia, psychosis, major depressive disorder. So yeah, there isn't a clear difference, and I actually don't see them as very different. They are both two forms of psychotherapy as well as counseling, two forms of talking therapy. And of course, each therapist, each psychotherapist or counselor can choose, dependent on their training and their further professional development, can choose what modalities of treatment they engage. Anything from anything from cognitive behavioral therapy to person-centered, to psychoanalytic approaches, to psychodynamic approaches, to acceptance and commitment therapy, to compassion focused therapy, mindfulness based cognitive therapy, you name it. So it's very much dependent on the individual. I think many people who qualify as a counselor call themselves a psychotherapist, or many people who qualify as a psychotherapist will call themselves a counselor. In my view, they are both therapists. And what therapy does is helping people identify difficulties, um, process feelings and emotions, and find their own solutions. Um, Many people, again, would say that a psychotherapist would be a little more guiding, would maybe approach a more expert stance, and a counselor would be more person centered and allow work at the pace of the person, of the client, and allow the client to come up with their own solutions. It's an entire process, of course. Be you a counselor or be you a psychotherapist, at the very beginning you will listen to your client and try to understand as much as possible who they are and where they're coming from and what's going on in their life. And of course, later on in the process, you will aim to use your knowledge, your experience, and your understanding of human mind and human behavior to offer helpful questions to encourage the client to explore and ask himself, herself questions that would advance their understanding of their own situation. You would be able as a counselor or psychotherapist to offer to your client tools or resources they can access to make them aware of certain online resources, or offer not necessarily advice, but maybe offer information that you hold in your mind, or information that is available out there, be that in a book or online. So yeah, I hope this makes sense. The way how I laid out the difference between counseling, psychotherapy, counseling, psychiatry, and psychology, and then the interplay I made between counseling and psychotherapy, and how personally I see them both as having some differences, but in reality being the same thing. It's just a matter of, I think nowadays it's just a matter very much of status and of ego. Do I call myself a psychotherapist because this sounds more, I don't know, posh and more academic? Or do I call myself a counselor, which might sound, sorry for the noise, which might sound less academic or less posh, but or not. You choose. Um, Maybe one very important aspect to be mentioned actually is that unfortunately counseling as a field is not protected. And by that I mean that, yeah, normally if you'd go and see a counselor, what I would advise you to do is to always check whether they are accredited by COSCA or BACP or IACP, be that Ireland, England, or Scotland, or Wales. Because nowadays anyone can choose to call themselves a counselor and put that title of counselor or therapist before their name, without actually necessarily having the qualification and the training required, which is essential. So yeah, I think that's me, what I wanted to share on the first point. Second point, I wanted to share with you a little bit about my experience as counselee, my experience of being counseled by a senior experienced counselor. Before that, I will take a sip of tea. Delicious. I was enjoying a good cup of tea. So yeah, I accessed counseling last year because I found myself in a very, very difficult circumstance, physically, emotionally, and mentally. To be said, I learned from my experience that one shouldn't seek therapy or counseling when they're in a crisis. They shouldn't wait for that. They should not wait for the moment when they break down to go and see someone. They shouldn't wait to be at their worst before they allow themselves to share their difficulty and their load with someone. So that's a lesson learned for me. I've always been very self-contained, and Always did a lot of work with myself. So I was quite convinced that I don't necessarily need to see a counselor until I decide to train as a counselor, and I'll have to do counseling and therapy as part of my training. But yeah, it came to the point where I found myself emotionally exhausted. I was completely burned out, running for the last few years between work and study and difficult situations and circumstances in my family, my extended family, to which I'm very much connected, although I live in a different country. So yeah, I accessed counseling when I was in a place of crisis, when I literally broke down and I decided I need to take a break from work and from studying, because I couldn't cope. The way I was doing things, it wasn't working anymore for me. I started experiencing a lot of anxiety. Um, Depression was something I've experienced over the years, but I've found ways to manage and cope with it, and that wouldn't affect my life um, to any major extent. But yeah, my experience of anxiety last year has been mind blowing and eye opening. And yes, I didn't like it when I was in that place last year, but boy, I've learned how much insight and how much wisdom I think I gained from that experience. I think it was worth it. Um, and I went and saw a senior counselor who has been just splendid. I think it's really important to find a good fit. And before I decided who am I going forward with, I saw 3 or 4 therapists, counselors. Yeah, and then I made a decision based on my intuition and based on the energy I felt from them, um, and also just based on their personality and how they approached me and how they were able to contain me from the first moment, because I came with a lot of heavy stuff. Like I had a lot to share. And yeah, at the beginning, of course, there was apprehension, and I was wondering, would she get me? Would she understand what am I going through? Would she be able to help me? She did very much. She was able to contain all the pain and the difficulty that I had to share. She helped me um, come to a different appreciation, perception of my circumstances and as myself as a person. She helped me accept my circumstances and myself, because I was self-rejecting constantly. I was in denial that I was going through what I was going. Um, yeah, and she helped me access tools and resources um, that now help me to and have helped me over the past few months to navigate those difficult emotional states, or to have more confidence that I do have the ability to cope with whatever life might throw at me, to put it that way. Um, I think what was most important is that she helped me find internal resources that maybe I lost touch with, or I wasn't even aware they were there. So that was life changing. And another very major aspect was helping me to redefine how I perceive myself and how I perceive my past traumatic experiences and how they were impacting my present moment. Um, so yeah, it was life changing. I'm not exaggerating. It was life changing, and I think psychotherapy, counseling therapy has the potential to be life changing should the individual be ready to engage with that, work with themselves, and engage with that relationship that, by the way, it's essential. The counselor client, therapist client relationship, I think it's one of the, I don't think, I know it's one of the main ingredients to successful stories. So yeah, I encourage anyone out there who if they're struggling and they're thinking, should I go and see a counselor? Should I go and see a psychotherapist? Um, of course, allow yourself the time to get comfortable with the idea, because, as I said, it's really important for the individual to be ready to open up first, to be ready to be able to build trust in someone, um, and share their pain and their difficulty with. I think because in today's society, confidence and self-reliance, it's so praised and it's so applauded and it's so very much put on a pedestal. We almost feel like if we are going through rough times, to very difficult times, to turbulent times, through tormenting times, we have to do it on our own. And yeah, there is a lot of value in being able to talk to a friend. There is massive value in being able to talk to your partner or to your family. But the type of relationship that you can develop with a therapist, it's unique. It's unique and it will not be equaled by any other type of relationship that you develop with any friends or any family member. Why? Because a counselor and a therapist, a psychotherapist, will have a set of qualities as a human being, as well as a set of skills and the experience that most commonly, unless your friends are trained psychotherapists or psychologists or counselors, will not have it. Not because they don't want it, but they're not equipped. So yeah, I really encourage those of you out there who struggle or who maybe want to, access next levels in their lives in terms of self-development and personal growth and professional growth. Do seek therapy, do seek counseling. It's a marvelous form of help, professional help, that if you engage with the process and if the psychotherapist, the counselor, is a good fit, it will be life-changing. And I can't highlight this enough. It is life-changing. It requires a lot of vulnerability. And again, in today's society, we are shamed for being vulnerable and we are applauded for being strong. And yeah, there is value in being strong, but I think the greatest value you get out of being healthy, strong, not unhealthy, strong. And by that, I mean, many people put a show of strength, but underneath, inside, they collapse, they're exhausted, they're absolutely terrified. And I say that because I've been one of those people who always put a show of strength. Because of my upbringing and my experience, I've learned that I always had to be the strong one, and I always had to be the smart one, and I always had to be the person who never complained and the person who never had problems. And that has been a very heavy load I carried for many years. And yeah, I wasn't necessarily pleased to discover that I was engaging with a unhealthy form of being strong and living that out. But yeah, with the help of a therapist, I managed to see that the strong that I was putting out there was very toxic for me. I was trying to be strong for everyone and also strong for myself, though internally I was struggling very much. And again, like after, many people will think, well, should I engage in counseling? How long it will take? Would that be long term? Would that be short term? How would I know what kind of help I need from that person? You will explore all these options with your counselor or your psychotherapist. Your therapist is there to help you, to listen to you, and in order to be able to help you, they will have to listen to you from a place of giving you the power back, not taking the power from you. I think it is life changing when you enter a relationship where there is a secure power balance. Being that you might be at your weakest, might be very vulnerable and very anxious or very scared or very apprehensive, or in a crisis, or feeling like going mad in your head because you're spinning and spinning and spinning in thoughts and emotions and overwhelmed. And yeah, uh, so I definitely encourage you, if you do decide to seek support, make sure that the counselor or the psychotherapist you see is accredited and it has a good level of training and qualification. And you will explore with your counselor what methods should there be a good fit, should they be a good fit for you. Um, you'll explore with them what kind of methods of psychological treatment they can use depending on their qualification and training as well, what they are qualified in. Should your counselor or yourself understand that use are not a good fit, most commonly, very commonly, I would hope every time the counselor or the psychotherapist will refer you to different peers or colleagues or different services, so you wouldn't be stuck with not knowing where to go. And I think it's really important to be honest with yourself if you feel like your counselor is not a good fit, um, to speak that out, or to drop it rather than going ahead with it for the sake of it because you engaged with them one, twice, or three times. In terms of cost, you can expect, if you see a private counselor, psychotherapist, you can expect anything from 50 quid to 80 quid upwards. The average price for a private counselor or psychotherapist will be £60. If you access it through various services, it might be cheaper, or it might be actually for free if it's a charity, an NGO, third sector, in NHS as well. Counseling and psychotherapy is available for free for those patients who require psychological treatment and therapy. Though to be honest, even to these days, the waiting lists are long, very long in terms of time. I'm thinking time frame 6 months to 3 years. So yeah, it's pretty mad to be honest, but that's the reality. No wonder, given everything that's happening in the world, there's no wonder that people need support and seek support. And I'm very impressed by the people who seek support. I'm not impressed by those who deny that they need help. That's the ego talking. That's not the real person talking. And not seeking help, it's not brave, in my perspective. So yeah, having said all this, I think I'm going to close it here for today. I hope that what I shared has been interesting, helpful, hopefully inspiring. I hope that this might encourage you to look into counseling as a form of support with your mental and emotional health, as well as a form of advancement in your personal professional development or in your relationship development, should you want to, I don't know, find love. So yeah, it was really nice to explore and discuss and share my experience and my knowledge, and I hope you found it helpful. I'd really appreciate to hear any comments or opinion, or if any of you had experience of counseling, hopefully positive ones, because there are out there a lot of people who don't necessarily have a positive experience because maybe it wasn't a good fit, or maybe they didn't resonated with the specific psychotherapeutic modalities that the counselor used, or just it wasn't a good match. It's really important. The match is really important. So I can't stress that enough. But I would hope that most of people would have a positive experience of counseling and psychotherapy. So yeah, with all this being said, I wish you a very good day. And I look forward to seeing you soon. To give you a quick glance at what to expect in the next video, I currently completed module 1 of the certificate in counseling skills training, and it has been marvelous. And I already started the module 2. And yeah, I look forward to making a video where I share with you my experience of module 2, of the content we explore, we will explore and have my experience overall. Till then, have a lovely day and take good care of yourself. And if you feel like you could do with some support, you could do with some help, don't hesitate to seek that help. That is brave. Bye for now.